Hi, I'm Rosenberg. Welcome to my latest YouTube video and podcast. Today's going to be a doozy. I am going to talk about something that's going to be very controversial. So buckle up. First, before I begin, let me say my intention is not to cause trouble. If you have followed me over the last 15 years, you know that I have created new ways of thinking about problems, issues, disorders, processes that clearly been different, out of the ordinary, strange, and for some people, just plain old weird. And even when I started this whole human magnet syndrome idea about narcissists always being drawn to codependents and codependents being drawn to narcissists, there was a lot of reactions like, what are you talking about? How can you use such a simple concept on complicated human functions and relationships? And I would say to them, did you read my book or have you gone to one of my seminars? And typically the person would say no. And I said, well, please do that. And you'll see I'm explaining human phenomena, relational phenomena, using existing psychological theory and concepts and explanations and bringing it together to explain what seems invisible, but really has a very distinct explanation that it can be replicated over and over again. And then time has proven that the human magnet syndrome now is a concept, a theory that holds true for over 99% of romantic relationships that start off with chemistry. So there, for all those naysayers and all those people that wiggled in their seats, I hope you're still with me. So now let's do this again. I'm about to talk about Codependency Anonymous, or Codependents Anonymous, and it's CoDependents. And that dash is really important. And before I explain why it is corrupt and broken at its core, I need to first give you some historical information about codependency. By the way, all of the information I'm going to talk about can be found in Chapter 6 in my new book, The Codependency Revolution, Fixing What Has Always Been Broken. This is the short version, guys. The longer version's in the book. So in the 1950s, when alcohol treatment finally moved towards the medical model and it was seen as a disease, basically embracing what the AA had been telling people since 1939, they focused mostly on the person and their disease as manifested in their brain, the addiction. The focus was on the alcoholic. That was it. So at the end of treatment, someone would go home, and let's consider successful treatment, and would be sincerely in recovery, no intention of relapsing, and prepared for a lot of the stressors that were part of the triggering mechanisms to lead them into drinking. But what they did not know, nor did they not do, is they did not include the family members. So an alcoholic would go home, the family had no treatment, there was no information given to them, there was no discussion, analysis of their role in the dysfunction that would lead to the alcoholic feeling frustrated, anxious, where he or she would be activated, triggered, or made more vulnerable to want to drink. And so the recovering alcoholic from these treatment programs would go back home, and the family would be normal dysfunctional, an alcoholic family. And next thing we would know is the alcoholic would relapse or need to go back into treatment. And there was such a high rate of recidivism or relapse, the powers that be in the medical community and the addictions community started to look at the importance of including the partner of the alcoholic in the assessment phase, the treatment phase, and the aftercare phase. And that is when the relapses lowered. This way, the partner of the alcoholic would see a counselor or be involved to some degree to the treatment program so that the family system, the relational system, and its impact on addictions would be addressed, and that would make the now recovering alcoholic more capable of maintaining sobriety and overcoming urges or triggers or activations because the family also was working on themselves too. So what they called the partner of alcoholics in these treatment programs was a co-alcoholic. And that was a very important designation. The co-addict is the person who is the partner of the addict. The co-alcoholic was a partner of the alcoholic. Well, in about the late 70s, early 1980s, the whole substance abuse, alcohol, and drug treatment fields decided to come together under one umbrella because there was much more in common, or there were many more similarities between drug addiction and alcoholism than there were differences. And after all, alcohol, which is ethyl alcohol, that's a chemical, it's a drug, it's just our TV commercials, radio commercials, and all the advertising people that want to make tons of money make it really sexy and delicious and desirable. So we took that out of its own category and we referred to it all as chemical dependency. So if you went to treatment, you went to treatment at a chemical dependency center that either specialized in alcohol or included alcohol and drug addiction. And they included the co-addict. So the term co-chemically dependent became too big of a mouthful of words, just too many syllables. So co-chemically dependent became codependent, co-dependent. And that literally meant the partner of the drug addict. And the science, the mental health community, the science that supported it, research, education, all came around to this idea and supported the importance of involving the partner of the addict in treatment, just like they had begun with the alcohol treatment programs years earlier. There was built this idea of a co-addict, and co-addict have distinguishing features. They are usually angry and resentful about their partner's chemical dependency. They don't like it, but yet they try to control it. They try to stop it. They try to monitor it. They try to watch over it. If they get mad, they act out themselves. They are in some way creating fertile dysfunction in an already dysfunctional background. So the co-addict, as they already determined earlier, is a part of this system of what makes the addict an addict. The co-addict is now involved in therapy. They have their own designation, co-addict, co-chemically dependent, and under this new umbrella term, it became, as I said before, codependent. Not a lot of syllables, rolls right off the mouth. And that became the beginning of codependency. That is where the word comes from. It does not mean someone who is dependent is a partner with another person who's dependent. It doesn't mean two dependent people. The term codependence, well, that's a term that is a derivation of this, of the co-dependent. So what I call these terms in the infancy of the field of codependency is codependency with a dash, or codependency with a dash. But somewhere around 1983, give or take, Melody Beattie wrote a phenomenal, world-changing book that recalibrated people's understandings of codependence. And she called it Codependent No More. Correction, the book was written in 1986. Nevertheless, Melody Beattie changed co-dependence or dependence into codependence without a dash. And what she did was, she as a non-clinical practitioner, which is amazing. This woman, her major skill set was writing, journalism, and she was able to create a wealth of information, a mountain of information about problems that people who identify with her term codependent. She developed a concept, an idea, and even ways to overcome it. But it's crucial for you to understand this. Her ideas come from the medical model's use of codependence, or the idea that it is the partner of the alcoholic who is trying to stop and control the alcoholic, but really unknowingly, unconsciously is actually feeding into it or enabling it. She took all of this information and created a large range of helpful information, but all connecting to the person who is trying to control others who cannot, and in the process losing themselves. And that became, in essence, the central definition in all of her work. Melody Beattie has gone on record and said, I do not like to define codependency. She resists it. And if you Google it, you'll see what I mean. But if you dig deep and you synthesize what she says and what she refers to when she refers to codependence, she's referring to people who don't know how to take care of themselves, have really bad self-esteem, who only know how to take care of others, but they do it by pushing themselves onto others, taking control, creating resentment, creating anger, and ultimately fueling the very problem that they're trying to help. And for the next 26 years, it stood. Codependence, whether it was with the dash that derived more closely to alcohol treatment, or codependency or codependence, as Melody Beattie described, it changed very, very little. There has been almost no change in our understanding and definition of codependency and since the very beginning. But 26 years after Melody Beattie's book, I came on the scene. And I said, as a psychotherapist who has very strong clinical roots, in other words, I don't make things up just to make them up. If I come up with a new name, it's going to connect to known psychological, psychiatric phenomena that are researched, categorized, given names, used as diagnoses. And through my introduction of the human magnet syndrome work, I created a working definition for codependency. Because the problem with codependency is it means a little bit to everyone. And you can talk to one person and they will give you a definition of it, and another person will give you a complete opposite definition of it. There are so many books on codependency, none of them have an agreed upon standard definition. So being the clinical mental health purist as I am, I decided I was going to create a standard definition that was simple, black and white, easy to articulate, and easy to discern. And it would not go over 4 or 5 lines. And this is what I've been talking about for a while, so you probably know this, and if not, here it is. A codependent is a person who in relationships give all the love, respect, care, trust, and protection, LRCTP. They give that all to other people with hopes of reciprocation or it being mutual. They find out that it's not, because the human magnet syndrome basically says that codependents will always fall in love with narcissists. They find out that it can't be mutual, and they stay in a relationship. So let me simplify that. Codependency is defined as a person who gives all the love, respect, trust, and protection, LRCTP, with hopes that it'll be reciprocal. It never is, and they stay in a relationship. Boom. That's it. And then I would later create codependency personality types, because you can have this codependency problem, but have it be different in your personality. So then years ago, I created the active codependent, the passive codependent, cerebral, anorexic, oblivious, and other form of codependency personality types. All are different, but all are united by the singular definition of, in all their relationships, they give all the LRCTP away, want it to be reciprocated or equal, and it's not, and they stay. And that is codependency. And then I also explain that codependents are habitually and unconsciously and seemingly powerlessly attracted to pathological narcissists because of how their personality lines up to the narcissist. And it's because of the opposite pull of the caretaking and care needing and other codependent and narcissistic features that they come together predictably and sometimes permanently. So hopefully you're still following me because I'm getting to the point of this video. So Malady Beattie recreates codependency. There's an explosion of codependency books, and they all are talking about a little bit of the same thing, but they're talking about it differently. There is no standard agreed upon term. At about the time Malady Beattie came on the scene with Codependency Anonymous, that is when a group of people got together and created a 12-step group that would parallel Alcoholics Anonymous's program for codependency, and that became Codependents Anonymous. And note, there's a dash, Co-Dependents Anonymous. So both were created in 1986, and there was a give and take between Codependents Anonymous and Malady Beattie's contributions and Codependents Anonymous, and the biggest part to remember, and the original concepts of co-dependency being the partner of the addict, the person who tries to control others, tries to get them to stop doing things, who can't do it but still keeps trying and never learns how to care for themselves. So Malady Beattie furthers this dash concept of codependency, but she takes it out. But Codependents Anonymous keeps the dash in because they have stayed true to the original definition. Okay, so every 12-step program has an addiction that is articulated in step 1. It is universal. You are powerless over blank, and because of your powerlessness over this addiction, your life is unmanageable. And if it's alcohol, if it's cocaine, if it's sex, that blank is specific to the addiction. But Codependents Anonymous used, and I quote, the drug, the condition, the situation that you are powerless over, they used the concept of controlling others, which was borrowed from the early dash explanations for codependency. By that time are already antiquated and needed to be revised. So Codependents Anonymous, at its very core, begins with step 1. I am powerless over controlling others, and because of that, my life is unmanageable. And the central problem, or its definition of codependency, is controlling others. Now, we do know that if you belong to the personality group of active codependents, you do control others. But it doesn't work because you're codependent. No one listens to you, and you're fighting a losing battle. We also know that there are passive codependents that don't try to control anyone. They're like, for you old timers, you might have remembered All in the Family and Edith Bunker. They are, or my grandfather Chuck, they are the ones that are the salt of the earth that just give to everyone and just want everyone to be friends and love each other and try to pull people together. And then you can be the oblivious one where you just bury your head in the sand and pretend it doesn't exist. You can be the cerebral one where you are reading, studying, going to therapy, going to all these seminars and or these retreats and trying to solve it through knowledge. Or you can be other types of codependents, none of which have the central problem of trying to control others. Following my conception, my definition, my theories, which is why I wrote this book and specifically titled it the codependency revolution, fixing what has always been broken, is that we have to understand what everyone knows about codependency was never right because it dealt with co-addiction, co-chemical dependency, and then was galvanized and formalized in early Melody Beattie times, and then with Codependents Anonymous, or CoDA. Codependency is not the problem of controlling others. It is the opposite. Codependents are controlled by everyone. An active codependent who tries to control someone, which would probably be the closest type of codependent to what Melody Beattie would say. They're really not controlling anyone. They're in a hamster wheel. They think that if they just keep doing this, that, or the other, it'll make a difference, but it doesn't. So they don't control anyone. And what makes this mind-blowing, that just is, to me, it's really disturbing, is that it is a projection placed upon codependence, is that most narcissists in a relationship with codependents will project to their partner codependent that they are controlling. And projection is this unconscious process by which you cannot admit to or see the malignant problems, the hurtful problems, the dysfunctional problems that you bring into relationships. And because you can't see it, and if you did, it would be too shameful, you put it onto other people. You blame other people for it. So if you're controlling, you say to your partner, they're controlling. If you're a liar, you say to them, they're a liar. If you're selfish, you accuse your codependent partner of being selfish. That's a projection. Projective identification is when you identify with, admit, agree, take on the projection. And in the case of a codependent narcissist, you accept the idea that you control people, and that's the problem. And that is why Codependency Anonymous is broken at its core, because the primary addiction is really a part of the narcissist's projection of the codependent. So you are essentially telling the codependent what is wrong with you is what is actually what's wrong with the narcissist, and the problems and the pain and the trauma that you are experiencing from others. That's insane. So when you compel a codependent to work on these 12 steps, and every step connects to the first step, I am powerless over controlling others or others, and because of that, my life is unmanageable. Everything that moves you forward in codependency recovery is based upon projections, maybe gaslighting, maybe misunderstandings. And what it does, it actually increases the shame and the feelings of being trapped, while neither the codependent is consciously aware of it or the folks perpetrating it are. And I say that because people in Codependency Anonymous are not bad people. The folks that created it were not bad people. That's just how science works. That's just how stuff happens in the world of ours. We start off with the best we can think of, and over time, through trial and error, and with knowledge and a dependence on science, we learn from our mistakes and we move forward. But since 1986, and that's 38 years, if my math is right, we have been asking codependents to accept the projection of control as the primary descriptive, defining element of codependency, and to give that up and to just focus on their own selves. Now, just to be clear, I'm not here lambasting Codependency Anonymous and saying everything is wrong, because there is so much good within Codependency Anonymous that helps people with their self-esteem, their relationships, building community. But at the very center of the program is a gaslit imperative that you have to admit to being out of control with your ability of controlling others, and because of that, your life's unmanageable. And eventually, when you work these steps, you're going to eventually get to a step 6 and maybe 8. It's the one where you have to make amends. And then eventually you're going to go to people and make amends, and you're going to apologize for the problems they actually perpetrated against you. And you're going to take those on and ask for forgiveness. I'm sorry I controlled you. I'm sorry I was always watching you and berating you and never accepting you. And if she or he is saying that to a narcissist, what you have done is you have galvanized the trauma for which they have already been smothered by. Codependents Anonymous is broken at the core. The core addiction of codependency is the inability to love yourself, what step one should be. And I wrote, not only did I think sensitively, compassionately, and empathetically analyze Codependents Anonymous, or CoDA, but at the end of the chapter gave my suggestion for updates on the steps. Step one, admitting powerlessness over unconditionally loving, respecting, and caring for others while not demanding the same in return. I'll say that again. Admitting powerlessness over unconditionally loving, respecting, and caring for others while not demanding the same in return. That's the problem. It is a problem of self-love, which is why I renamed codependency self-love deficit disorder. And if self-love deficit disorder or self-love deficiency is the core problem, and all of the steps connect to that, then we have a 12-step program that makes sense. I want to do a thought experiment just to emphasize why this information is so important and that we need to change something that's good, that has great intentions, that is accidentally hurting people. We need to make it better. We need to make it great. So I want you to think of any codependent that you know that goes to CoDA, that is a longtime member of CoDA. Okay? Now ask yourself, are they still in a relationship with a narcissist? If they are not, was their next relationship with a narcissist? And what you're going to find is most people in CoDA are still in a relationship with narcissists. There's not a connection to codependency being this problem of this attraction to narcissists and the inability to take care of themselves and to love themselves, the inability to require mutual love, unconditional love in relationships. Now for you guys, and for the next thought experiment, think of the people in CoDA who are sponsors. It's my experience that a lot of the sponsors in CoDA run on the narcissistic side. Remember, Codependency Anonymous uses the primary addiction as controlling others, and that is a projection that narcissists use on other people. They say to them, you're controlling me, when in reality, you're being controlled by them. My experience is that many, not all, not the majority, but many of the sponsors who are sticklers to the steps are not codependent, but have narcissistic issues. Now, I say that because I deal with my clients who have gone to CoDA and come back to me and have been very upset with the interaction between some community members and themselves and the level of control with regard to working the steps as they are written. Now, just to be fair, then we'll use Alcoholics Anonymous. You have to be black and white with the steps as they are written, because that is the nature of the program. That's how it works. This is not a therapy program. You don't have the luxury of having a psychotherapist to analyze things and to understand shades of gray. It needs to be black and white. But if we have someone who is demanding black and white adherence to a 12-step program that's fundamentally shames the codependent and requires them to bring on a gaslit narrative of control for which they're actually a victim to, we have a bad recipe. And so I want you to know this, and I'm not exaggerating. I've been in this field for a very long time. I've been working with codependency a very long time, much longer than when I wrote my book, The Human Magnet Syndrome, in 2013. I have not seen a lot of positive outcomes, long-term positive outcomes of codependents who have gone through the program at CoDA. And my definition of positive outcome goes directly with the definition of codependency. And that is this tendency to give all the love, respect, caring, trust, and protection away with hopes that it's mutual. It's not, and they stay in a relationship. And of course, they're controlled or miserable or however it plays out. which is why, sadly, I have asked my clients not to go to CoDA because I'm afraid of how it's going to hurt them more than it's going to help them. So if you are a fan of Codependency Anonymous, if you are a founding member or you are in the inner circle of a Codependent Anonymous group, take the best in this video or what is written in my book and leave the rest. It's time to fix what has always been broken. Codependency is not about control. It is a problem with extreme self-love deficiency, with core shame, pathological loneliness, and an inability to stop this addictive impulse to be in a relationship to escape the pain of severe loneliness. It's a problem of self-love. So let's join together and fix this. I welcome anyone to contact me so that I can be a participant in a building process. For more information of what I do, please go to selfloverecovery.com or write us at help@selfloverecovery.com. We have a brand new Patreon program that has been designed to give help to codependents or people who are self-love deficient at different levels, different subscription levels, and are even developing Patreon subscription for mental health providers, people who are trying to help SLDs, self-love deficient folks, or codependents. I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment, subscribe, or just give us a call and email. Thank you for your time, and I wish you the very best.